Welcome back. I'm Barbara O'Neill.
And today, we're tackling a topic so many of us struggle with: managing our weight while balancing the demands of daily life.
But we're going to be looking at weight loss now. 63% of Australians are either overweight or obese. I think that America's not far behind, and I say far behind because I know that Australia has taken over America. But when I'm in Alabama and I go to the little town of Loveland, I have to tell you, I think that they're bigger than our big. They're very large people in those little towns. So my inquiry always is why. And so we're going to look at it again in relation to weight. And it's the high carbohydrate diet that many people are eating today.
If you've ever felt stuck, frustrated, or unsure where to start, you're not alone. The good news is that achieving a healthy weight doesn't have to feel overwhelming or impossible. With the right knowledge and simple adjustments, you can take control of your health in ways that truly work for you. So settle in, and let's explore practical, effective strategies to support your journey toward a healthier, happier you.
So bread is very common. Cereal, there's a whole aisle devoted to cereal. And many people having bread and cereal for breakfast, by mid-morning they're wanting something else. So they reach for, and we're just going to say cakes, etc., because if we say everything, there's not enough room on the board for it. When you go into muffins and croissants and donuts and pasties and pies and pastry, etc., etc., etc. So we're just going to put etc. Also, pasta. I'm a fifth generation Australian Scottish descent. I didn't know what pasta and pizza was till I was about 18. So what did I grow up with? Sausages or chops, mashed potatoes, frozen peas or beans every single night of the week, except for Sunday when Mum would do a roast lamb. And everyone I knew ate like that. Our relatives ate like that, the neighbours ate like that. As a fifth generation Australian, I grew up in a little Presbyterian church. Everyone in the church ate like that. I came to the conclusion as a child that everyone in the whole world ate like that, but it's not quite true, is it? I actually had never even heard of brown bread. So this was real traditional Australian. Rice, I'd never had rice. I don't think I went to a Chinese restaurant till I was about 18. And that's the first time I ate rice. Potatoes, well, we ate potatoes every meal. And last and certainly least in nutritive value is the pure crystallised acid extracted from the sugarcane plant. And as we have looked at this, we've also acknowledged that I don't think anyone chose to eat that way. It's just fast. It's just there. And we're such a fast society today. Here it is. And we showed how when all of these things break down in the body, they break down to the singular structure of glucose. Our gastrointestinal tract is a hollow tube. And anything that goes into that hollow tube is not part of you or me until it gets broken down into tiny little particles, then it's absorbed into the blood, then it becomes part of you and me. Because it is the blood that carries the nutrients here to the CBD, the central business district of the human body, is the inside workings of the cell. In fact, one writer called the blood the river of life because of what it carries. And so it brings the glucose goes in under the action of insulin, goes through the 20-step pathway. I'm sure everyone's very familiar with the inside workings of the cell now. And that 20-step pathway gives us 2 units of energy. Isn't that why we eat? To get glucose, to run our energy cycles. The end result of the 20-step pathway is a chemical form of glucose called pyruvate. And pyruvate, as the chemical form of glucose, gets fed into what's called the powerhouse, because these 8 little chemical reactions, this 8-step pathway, delivers impressive 36 units of energy. And the reason why the 8-step pathway gives 36 units of energy is the presence of oxygen. So this is called the aerobic pathway. Whereas this pathway is called the anaerobic pathway because it does not use oxygen. It produces energy by the process of fermentation. So when When we eat the carbohydrates, they're broken down to glucose. The first place the glucose is sent is to the cell. The second place it is sent, because only so much can go through the energy cycles, then it is stored as glycogen. We looked at this morning and how that's particularly useful for the diabetic, having these little, well, it's useful for everyone because they're little molecules of glucose sitting in the muscle cell. And that's why the best place to, or the best time to exercise is early morning. Because in early morning, when you're starting to move, some people say, well, how are we going to get fuel to actually exercise? It's your glycogen stores already sitting in your muscle cell. And when the cell needs it, it's plucked and it's released.
While carbs are an essential energy source, eating too many, especially late in the day, can be counterproductive. Most carbs are broken down into glucose, which raises blood sugar levels. This triggers insulin, the hormone that directs glucose to be used as energy or stored as glycogen. The problem arises when glycogen storage is maxed out. The excess glucose is converted into fat.
You see, it's not the fat that makes you fat. It's actually these refined carbohydrates. Now, carbohydrates are not bad. What a relief. We like them. The problem is when they're overdone and refined. That's the problem. When they're overdone and refined. So you don't have to stop the carbohydrates. You just have to make sure they're not overdone, they're not refined, and ideally use replacements for the wheat. Because as we looked at in diabetes this morning, in the hybridization of the wheat, they change the starch structure and it gets the blood sugar level up higher than even refined sugar. Ooh. And so changing the times that you eat, that makes a big difference. And changing the food you eat makes a huge difference. I was reading the testimony of a chef. He was large, obese. And he said he used to eat little bits all day long. All day long. That's all he'd eat, little bits all day long. So he decided to do an experiment. He decided to get all the little bits and put it into 3 meals. He knew the old saying, and have most of it at breakfast and lunch. And he lost a lot of weight. And he ate the same amount of food. And he ate the same type of food. He just changed the times when he did it. Because he gave his stomach a break. You see, it's like my husband. He says, I had a 2-hour job to do in the office today. He said, at the end of the day, it's 8 hours later and I still haven't done it. Because he said someone would ring up. Someone would come into the office. I kept getting interrupted. Has that ever happened to you? That's exactly what happens to digestion. When we put food in our stomach, we should now leave it. Let it do its work. After about an hour and a half, 2 hours, start sipping on some water. Then you don't water down your hydrochloric acid. It takes 3.5 to 4 hours to digest a meal. If a person has a meal of watermelon, that's probably gone in about 2 hours. But when someone has a balanced meal, which is shown here, it takes about 3.5 to 4 hours to digest. And then the stomach loves a 1 hour rest. Let your stomach have a rest between meals. And in that rest time, it has time to revive and restore and replace the digestive enzymes it used at the last meal. And that's why the time-restricted eating, we've talked about this a couple of times, time-restricted eating is basically a modern name for this. Time-restricted eating, it's from the intermittent fasting, the 5-2 diet, a lot of people are familiar with that. Dr. Michael Mosley, in his book Fast Diet, he goes into the research showing why this is so effective. It's eating twice in a 24-hour period. They suggest eating a large meal at 1 and another meal at 7. But I was talking to one girl and she said, I'm fading by 10 in the morning. And she said, and I can't sleep at night because I've got so much food in my stomach. When we go to sleep, our stomach wants to sleep. So it's far superior to go back to the old adage that's been around for so many years, probably hundreds of years. that we eat breakfast as our main meal, that we have a main meal in the middle of the day, and then if anything's eaten at night, make it very light. Now, if a worker has a breakfast at 6 a.m. and then has a meal at 12 o'clock, they may need something at night. But if they have the meal at 8 and at 2 or at 9 and at 3, then it's very easy not to eat at night. So you've just got to work out what works for you. One lady said to me, she said, I give my children a really substantial breakfast, and we'll look at illustration of meals in a minute. Should I give them a really substantial breakfast? She said, I just give them an orange for lunch. And she said, and when they come home at 3:30, and by the way, how much lunch do kids eat at school? They just want to play, don't they? So she gives them something light, and when they get home, they're hungry. How many kids get home hungry and want to eat, and then they're not wanting to eat their evening meal, and it's too late anyway? So she said, when I see that school bus come, she said, I got the table set. The kids come in, they're hungry, and have the meal there. She said it works so well. She said they never used to eat much at night because they had so much when they got home from school. But husband doesn't come home till maybe 5 or 6, and often he wants quiet. So he's very happy to just eat quietly by himself. And maybe the lady who wants to lose weight, she'll sit with her husband and drink a peppermint tea, or maybe she'll just have a bowl of salad. One lady said, but Barbara, that's when my family's together, my teenagers, my husband. I said, well, just make it a lighter meal, make it soup. Make it a bowl of soup and crackers. Crackers digest easily, much easier than bread.
Late night eating amplifies this issue. As your metabolism slows down, in the evening the body stores more of that late night snack as fat, rather than burning it for energy. Large carb-heavy dinners can also disrupt your natural circadian rhythms, further hindering metabolism and promoting fat storage. Opting for lighter, smaller meals in the evening aligns better with your body's natural processes, reducing unnecessary weight gain.
And this is his story, Dr. Atkins. He said he was a GP, late 40s, putting on a bit of excess weight. He knew his science. He knew that carbohydrates stored as fat, so he decided to do an experiment on himself. He decided to stop all carbohydrates. And he theorised that if he stopped all carbohydrates, his body would start to live on his fat stores. So what did he eat? He chose foods that had no carbohydrate. So his diet was high in protein, meat, butter, cream, cheese, eggs, that's a lot of protein. Fat, meat, butter, cream, cheese, eggs, that's a lot. But something else surprised me that you never hear about. He ate 3 cups of vegetables a day, and 1 cup had to be greens. And so there was the fibre. The weight just fell off him. He theorised right. He wasn't giving carbohydrates to his body, so, well, hardly any, a little bit in the vegetables. So his body started to live on his fat stores. The weight started to drop off him. He was never hungry because these are the 3 foods that give the feeling of satiation, satisfaction. He had lots of energy, because your liver can convert protein and fat to glucose if it needs it, and it can break down your fat stores to give you glucose. It's called gluconeogenesis, creating glucose from the fat stores. Has he found the perfect diet? Never hungry, lots of energy, weight's falling off him, so he started to put some of his patients on this. It is estimated that 11 million people were helped by his diet. His book was #1 on the New York Times best-selling book list 4 years running. This guy demands some attention. But the problem is that after a while, some of his patients were developing arthritis because this is a high-acid food. In fact, I had a man come to me wanting a consultation when I was in New York a few years ago. He said, I used to be one of Dr. Atkins' patients. He said, I'm a vegetarian, I'm an Adventist, but I was getting overweight, I was getting diabetes, heart disease, so I went to Dr. Atkins, because he's a very famous doctor. And Dr. Atkins, he said, was a very gracious man. He said, I'm sorry, but you're going to have to stop this high carbohydrate diet. So he said, I started eating meat. I didn't eat a lot. I had a lot of vegetables. He said, I didn't get diabetes. He said, my heart problems all resolved. He said, the weight dropped. But he said, I'm getting arthritis. And he said, you are the first nutritionist that hasn't totally slammed Atkins. I'm interested. I said, well, Atkins' theory was correct. It's what I have shown you today. But what you can do superior to Atkins. You can do the plant proteins. You can do the plant fats. Dr. Atkins, on his first stage, he got people down to 20 grams of starch, carbohydrates a day. Do you know there's no need to go that low? All you need to do is greatly reduce the carbohydrates, ideally stop the wheat, eat more vegetables, eat more legumes, nuts and seeds, and you can get a similar result. Because of the results that he was getting, and by the way, his cancer patients were going into remission, people with high cholesterol were coming back to normal. Did everyone hear that? And his patients were eating meat, butter, cream, cheese, eggs. And what are people told to get their cholesterol levels down? They've got to stop the meat, butter, cream, cheese, eggs. So Atkins threw a spanner in the nutrition world's wheel, and it needed the spanner thrown into that wheel. And the only reason his patients got away with it for so long is the 3 cups of vegetables a day, which have an alkalizing effect. But the beauty of the plant proteins, it's much cleaner burning fuel. It doesn't leave an acid waste like the protein does. And when I was consulting with this man, he said to me, I believe if Dr. Atkins had read the China study, Atkins would have become a vegetarian. What an interesting comment. So you can get those results, but you can do it on a plant diet as long as you do the legumes. And so many people say, oh, legumes, you've got to soak them, you've got to cook them. Well, when you go home tonight, just fill up the saucepan and fill it up with lentils. In the morning, rinse it well, bring it to the boil, rinse it again, put it in your slow cooker. There's lots of shortcuts. Or soak a whole lot, rinse heaps of them and then put them in snap lock bags in the freezer. Then you just pull it out, cook them. There's lots of shortcuts. And you can get organic beans in tins. Just make sure you bring them to the boil and rinse them very well. So it's easy, it need not be difficult. You see, animal protein, it burns at, so let's look at protein. Animal protein, only 58% is burnt as fuel. So that's a 42% waste. That's the acid waste. And that's what Dr. Colin Campbell found in his book, The China Study. He could switch cancer cells on and off, and we looked at this briefly when we looked at cancer on the first night. Because it's an acid waste. And cancer thrives in an acid environment. We looked at that. Whereas plant protein, it's a lot cleaner burning fuel. It doesn't have that acid waste. So with plant protein, you're getting up to about 80% easy is burnt as fuel. That's a big difference. So your plant protein is a superior protein. What Atkins found, and I found this interesting, he found that these 3 food groups are the essential food groups. Fibre is essential because the colon needs to be swept. We looked at that when we looked at the colon, when we looked at the waste disposal organs. Protein is essential because the crossword bands, remember we looked at the DNA on the first night, it's made up of amino acids. Amino acids is a breakdown from the protein we eat. And it's amino acids that builds the new cells in the body. And 50% of the membrane around every cell in the body is protein. That's essential. Fat is essential. The fat-free diet is a dangerous diet. There are fats that'll kill and there are fats that'll heal. And because there are some killer fats, they've all been dumped in the same basket. What are the killer fats? The altered fats. You see, for centuries, people used the coconut oil and the olive oil. They can be extracted from the flesh of the plant. But those hard seeds, they couldn't really get the oils out until they developed high heat chemical equipment to extract oil from hard seeds. And because they use chemicals and heat, they destroy the oils immediately. So there's clear plastic bottles that have got sunflower oil, peanut oil, soy oil. Don't touch them. They're the oils that can help to damage the arterial wall. They're the dangerous oils. And your deep fried foods. If you do fry any food, it should be always in a saturated fat, because saturated fat is heat resistant and light resistant. The heat doesn't destroy them.
For those seeking a more structured approach, the Atkins diet offers another option by reducing carb intake. The body enters ketosis, a metabolic state, where fat becomes the primary energy source. Instead of glucose, high-protein, high-fat foods like eggs, meat, and cheese promote satiety, naturally reducing calorie consumption. Protein also requires more energy to digest, giving your metabolism a subtle boost. Pair this with low-carb vegetables for fiber, and you'll have a well-rounded approach to weight managing.
Thank you for joining me today. I hope these insights inspire you to take charge of your health in ways that feel achievable and empowering. Remember, reaching your goals doesn't require exhausting workouts or endless restrictions, just simple, mindful adjustments to your daily habits. If you found this helpful, please like, share, and subscribe for more tips and stories. Take care, and keep moving forward to a healthier, happier you.
So there ends my lecture which has freed and revolutionised many women and men. Thank you.